People are protesting you all, folks that are wearing the badge and doing the job. And the call to action in a lot of those protests is to defund the police, right? How do you react to that? Weeks ago, as the nation watched George Floyd lose his life at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer, wounds that never seemed to heal were once again reopened in this country. And in that moment, I decided I wanted to get a group of cops from around the country together on a video call to confront the issues and the problems that have long since plagued American law enforcement. I didn't want to provide a forum for carefully constructed and reviewed statements from spokespeople at City Hall. I wanted to hear an authentic, unfiltered conversation between cops from diverse backgrounds, dissecting the actions of not only those officers in Minneapolis, but the systemic issues within their profession, which have given rise to widespread outrage and protests on American streets, including people calling for the defunding of the police. This is part one of that conversation. I'm really excited to be with you guys here. Thank you for being so generous with your time on a Saturday.
No problems.
Glad to be here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. And Joe Dutton, why don't we start with you?
Okay, I had 31 years. I am now retired. I work for a city called Golden Valley, which is an inner suburb of Minneapolis. I'm a use of force expert. I testified in court in reference to that.
Yeah, so I was a police officer for 6.5 years for the Tucson Police Department. I was a spokesperson of the police department. I was a field training officer. I did just about everything. And I left the police department in 2017. As a police officer, I was actually in the process of promoting to sergeant.
Yeah, I'm Aram Cho. I've been on the job 20 years in February. I've been a sergeant for 3.5 years in Los Angeles County. And my specialty is as a public information officer, patrol sergeant, and public relations expert.
So I just retired in March from the Dayton Police Department in Ohio. I was there for 21 years and 5 years in the U.S. Army before that. In April, I assumed the position of Director of Research and Procedural Justice for the Charleston Police Department here in Charleston, South Carolina, where my primary responsibility is to implement the findings of a huge racial bias audit that the city of Charleston conducted over the last couple of years.
I was a sheriff's deputy for the Charles County Sheriff's Office for approximately 7 years. I was in K-9 for my last few years there. I love that job. That's probably the best job in police work. And then just recently, I accepted a job at one of DC's smaller departments.
Been in the game 8 years, sergeant, SWAT team member, FTO, pretty much working in one of the most dangerous cities in Ohio, and done it all in these 8 years, seriously, not even an exaggeration.
I've been in policing and law enforcement in general for over 20 years. Started out my career in policing with the New York City Police Department. Worked in all the major investigation bureaus within the NYPD, from the Detective Bureau, Internal Affairs, the Narcotics Division. I was the deputy chief for the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. Currently, I'm the first deputy commissioner of the Westchester County Department of Corrections. And my views today represent my own personal views as a professional law enforcement expert and not the views of my department.
I'm a detective, 16 years on the job. I was patrol for 10 years, detective now. Chicago, and we're north suburb called Zion, north suburb of Chicago. Very, very busy city. I was on SWAT, FTO back in the day, but now I run a outreach program.
It's great. I appreciate all of you guys being here. And I think the question I really want to throw out to the group first is, what is it like to be a police officer in America right now?
I'll go first. I know my first instance of when things changed was probably going from Trayvon to the Michael Brown incident. The Trayvon issue didn't really kind of affect us because I was a citizen. But, you know, when the Michael Brown incident happened, it seemed like people just kind of like switched on a dime. You know, you just felt like, man, I'm out here doing everything I can. And, you know, these people just turned on me for something I had nothing to do with. And it felt like I was being blamed for something that was going on in a whole other country.
Yeah, you know, it's like a big circle. You start and the public loves you. Like Byron was saying, they pay for your coffee or they'll do this or do that. And then a critical incident happens or something negative. No matter where it happens in the nation, it affects everybody in the nation. And I can remember having to evolve through that at least, seriously, about 5 or 6 times.
I can tell you what I think that what it appears to be is that policing in the negative sense is on steroids now compared to when I left in 2017. So I really hate to see the state of policing in America, because I believe that the police job, the police career, the calling is such an honorable thing. And it's one of the most integral careers to ever exist in America. Most police officers are doing the right thing. Most police agencies are holding people accountable. We have the knuckleheads out there, like you would have in any profession, that make us look bad. But it's sad to see such an honorable profession be treated this way in America.
Let's be really honest, like law enforcement in general has always been this way. Technology has advanced to a point where now we capture it. What we're seeing right now has been going on for decades. This ain't nothing new. You get what I'm saying? It's just now it's in the limelight. I didn't work with cops that's been racist. You know what I'm saying? I didn't work with cops that's been, sexist. You feel me? Like, this ain't something that's new. I'm not gonna say that I agree with the terms in which it has come out into the public, but I am happy that there is some light being shined, because it's no more hearsay, saying, hey man, the police took me around the corner and beat my ass. And that's all you got to go off of is your word. You get what I'm saying? Imagine if body cameras never got implemented. It's a gift and a curse. You get what I'm saying? It's helped me. You get what I'm saying? More so than it's harmed me. But when I first got introduced to a body camera, I was kind of like, I ain't really want it though, for real. But I had to learn to work with it. You get what I'm saying? But that's just my take on it,
I hear what you're saying, David, but do you think it's unique to police, or is it a people problem? Because if you're a racist cop, it means you're a racist person. If you've got prejudices, you carry those into the job, and sure, the job magnifies you. If you're a womanizer, the job amplifies that. If you're an idiot, the job amplifies that. I just don't see it being unique to law enforcement. I think law enforcement, and I've been in many professions. I teach at a very conservative Baptist university as well, and they go through a lengthy background process because you're working with students. But that still doesn't come close to what we go through as law enforcement officers. We go through a background process where they talk to everybody, including exes who don't have anything favorable to say about you. So When we get into this job, I think they do a pretty good job weeding out the bad people, but no process is perfect. For as long as there's for as long as there's somebody that wants this job, they're going to say the right thing. It's what happens after the fact. And I think if we look at the 99.5% of officers that do a good job every day, and you look at that very, very small minority of officers that do stupid things, I can't say that that's unique to police work. And it sounds like you're saying that we're bringing this to light. I think it's just human nature. As long as
I'm being honest with you, you know what I'm saying? I can only speak from experience. Guess what I'm saying? So for you, your experiences are different, so you have a different outlook. For me, my experiences are different, so I'm gonna have a different outlook. I'm not saying you're wrong, so I'm not wrong either. I can only go by what I've experienced.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get clarification as to what you're saying. I mean, my
So
entire career was in Los Angeles County. I started in '99 when there was hardly any Asian officers. So believe me, I understand that there is a little bit of conflict when it comes to different races and stuff. I've been there. I grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I've been through it all. But it's not unique to police. I didn't experience racism as soon as I became a police officer. It happened my entire life.
If I can jump in, I think it's so. As far as growing up, Black, we already have a different view of policing, because what a lot of people don't realize, and especially to some of my my white colleagues, is that and Joe, you're like my father's age. Segregation was just not that long ago. During my dad went to a segregated school. He's still walking around today. He's 70 years old. That wasn't that long ago. And during that time, police were used as the arm of a lot of segregationist policies. So we are taught in a lot of households in the Black community that cops are bad. Cops are bad. They're going to do this, whether it's warranted or not. So that's kind of like PTSD passed from our parents, our parents to us, that a cop, if he gets a hold of you, if he stops you, if he can do it and get away with it, he's going to do something bad to you. So that's kind of ingrained in a lot of us, valid or not, so that's one of the things that we're dealing with, so that's
jump in here really quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to throw this question to the group. By show of hands, who here feels that there were bad apples in the policing agency that they work in?
That there were?
Yeah.
Where or what or is?
Right.
Were.
Oh, okay.
I'm retired, David.
Yeah.
Short a while ago.
If there were, right? Do those bad apples need to be plucked, or is there a deeper problem at the root of the tree?
Nowadays, they do get plucked, and I think a lot of people. One of the misconceptions you see a lot online from a lot of these people, and they go, "Well, the good officers are bad officers because they don't say anything about the bad officers. That means they're the same." And what I think people don't realize is officers get fired all the time nowadays. Louis, you might not, NYPD, I watched the documentary. They had a lot of problems about guys, squashing whistleblowers, when they would see things. And, that kind of disturbed me. A lot of departments I see around here, though, is if you do something somebody sees, they're going to tell. And, you're probably going to get fired, but it's not going to get broadcast unless you do something egregious, like get into some type of organized crime or shoot somebody or do something like that. So people get fired all the time, and people tell them bad apples all the time. So it's not, it's not as rampant as you think it is.
Yeah.
But I also think it's the effect, right? So you look at, like in 2006 in Buffalo, you had a female African-American female officer try to stop and intervene on a white police officer having a suspect in a chokehold. And the response by the police department was to fire her. And now today in Minneapolis, we're saying that those officers' failure to intervene extends to them criminal culpability. So I think when we, like Byron had said, when we respond in a way where we terminate or retaliate against officers that come forward to stop criminal activity or serious misconduct, then that sends a message throughout the department. In the same way, when you have officers that, because of their family members or people that they know, I've known officers that have driven drunk and gotten fired. And I've known officers in the same department that have been arrested 3 times for driving drunk, and they went on to have a beautiful career. So the consequences are not the same, right? There's significant disparities in how predominantly minority cops are disciplined when they make mistakes or when they are whistleblowers. And there's a huge difference between their white counterparts and how they're disciplined. Yes. And they're coddled through the system. My position is simple. If you're a cop and you drive drunk, I think you should be fired. But either we fire them all or we send them all to treatment. Let's not only fire people that look like us and then send all the white people that drive drunk to treatment.
Well, I want to jump on this. Back in 2011, when I started the police department, it was a big thing on our department that if you mess up, they're going to throw you under the bus and back over you, because you're not going to be a liability on the police department. They'll let you go, especially when the rookie cops that weren't on probation, you're fired. You can't make any mistakes. So our police department was very strict. When I was a PIO, we fired plenty of people. If you commit a crime, you're done. Black officers and white officers and Hispanic officers were exactly the same. You mess up, you're going to make the department look bad. They're going to be forward thinking. They're going to fire you before it ever hit the news.
Unfortunately, that's not everywhere, though.
Yeah, that's a very unique situation.
I was just about to say.
I'm not saying it's everywhere. I'm just saying.
Yeah. That's unfortunate, though. It's not.
Brandon, and I like that you say certain aspects, but brother, please admit that what is being said is factual, bro.
I'm not denying that. Not one time have I denied it. I said on my department.
And I get that. You had a great department, bro. It was wonderful. You get what I'm saying? They did everything right.
Most departments I know were very similar to ours.
It's a lot of us, bro, that are in departments, and we see a lot of things swept under the rug, man. A lot. And we always say, me and specific other people will be like, damn, if that was me, brother, they kicked my ass up out of here. Like, I done seen it. Once again, we all are only speaking because of our experiences. Mm-hmm. The thing about me with my third eye, I realized that I also can't be ignorant that other things do go on outside of my department. You get what I'm saying? Like,
that's why it's important to have this panel here. Right. I'm glad we're not all regional. I'm glad we're from different parts of the country, because I can relate to what Brandon's saying. I've been to Georgia. I've been to Smyrna, and I was surprised to find out that they can't unionize in Georgia. Their attorney general outlawed unions out there. But agencies and states where police unions do exist, I believe the unions out there for the betterment of the officer, not just work conditions, but to make sure that their professional career thrives and survives.
City and local officials have held up police unions, though, as being an impediment to being able to pursue criminal charges, prosecution, or even remove, some of these bad apples. Is that a fair characterization?
No. And I say this, the union keeps, you are one person as an officer against a government agency. How are you going to fight them? Have unions made mistakes and believed some bad apples and tried to take care of the wrong people? Absolutely. As many cops are in the country, it's going to happen.
Well,
Yeah,
how many of those officers that are reinstated, they're not reinstated by unions. Most of the time they're reinstated by courts. And
Yes.
there's sometimes issues where police departments or cities are extremely sloppy in how they discipline or terminate officers. Not that the union is malicious in protecting those officers, but maybe the unions are holding the employer to a standard where that termination or discipline should meet a standard that it's not overturned in court.
I was going to just say that I was a union steward, and Wendy kind of hit it right, that there's a lot more to it than just unions trying to keep bad apples on police departments. Because I can guarantee you, I had no problem if they fired somebody, because more than likely, they deserve to be fired. Now, I don't know what it's like in all your states and how you guys do things, because I'm sure it's different. But in Minnesota, the county attorney brings the charges. The union has nothing to do with it. The union, like you just said, is a civil group. The criminal cases are brought by the county attorney's office, so they have nothing to do with it. I mean, if the county attorney is going to make a charge on an officer, like they are in this case, the union has nothing to do with it. They make the charge and let's go.
Let me ask you all this, because unfortunately, when these situations happen and these bad actors start to taint relationships with different communities in this country, mainly the Black community or certain Latino communities of color largely, why is it then that, like the officer who had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, who had something like 18 complaints against him, how are we not able to sort of sift through those individuals and remove them from situations where that can take place? And also, what do you think that has done to law enforcement's relationship with communities of color, mainly the Black community in America?
Well, I think that it's hard with you. I think it's like in our department, anybody that makes a complaint against you, it will be reviewed, no matter who it is, no matter what it is. I think that that's necessary. But what happens is you can have an officer that people just don't like how he acts, but that don't mean he's doing anything criminal, may get a lot of complaints against him that are not sustainable. So if you can't weed out the BS complaints, then you can't really get to the groundwork of some stuff, because there are officers who have legit complaints and they need to be fired. But if you just let people just say whatever, man, they can just not like an officer and forever they'll have these complaints. Now, as far as the Black community after George Floyd, I do not think that it should be this way. I do not think that that George Floyd situation should tear up the Black community and their relationship with police. I don't think that should be the case. The media is pushing it. Activists are pushing it. Politicians are pushing something that is conjuring up a hatred for police when it shouldn't be that case.
Wendy,
I agree with what Brandon
Wendy.
I agree with Brandon. I think a lot of the racial tension is media driven. I think there's a lot of people that are taking up this cause willy-nilly. They're not really doing the research to see that these are really minority cases. These are small cases that make the news. You don't see the good stuff that happens. Officers do amazing things every day. They rescue people. They take care of families that are displaced, but you don't see that because it's not sexy. And the news, unfortunately, became a business. And they've got to sell what sells.
And I also think you have to take into consideration the length of a person's career, right? So the officer in Minneapolis, the former officer Shaven, I think he had about 18 years on the job and he had about 18 complaints, right? So, you're dealing with the public all the time. If they're unsubstantiated and you're averaging 1 or 2 complaints a year, then you might not have a pattern of issues that need to be addressed. Now, if you get 10 complaints in 3 months, there may be something going on with the officer that needs to be addressed.
And Lee, it's sometimes it's hard. You can work with people every day, and you can think a person. It's like when you find out your next door neighbor was a cannibal or something. Mm-hmm. You're like, man, I talk to this guy every day. I never thought, he'd be eating people. Same thing with a guy on your shift. You just can't predict some people that are going to do just horrendous things.
You want to put a pin in that, Wendy? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're talking about systemic problems, but we're not typically dealing with them in a systemic way. And so a buddy of mine in Minneapolis told me that that entire division that Chauvin worked in was toxic. And, if that's the case, this guy was also a training officer. My buddy recommended that they actually apply this contact tracing idea to bad cops. Why aren't we going back and looking at every cop that he trained, every person that he influenced, and assess the situation and see if we can maybe unwind some of the damage that has been done?
Why do we never check that type of behavior right from the outset? Why is that like almost accepted that the good word that she uses is toxic, like that I hate people type of mentality, like that is ingrained so much and accepted in our culture of policing. I don't understand it. I never got it. Why is that not checked? We got body cameras. I can check what you do every day. Are you treating people?
Let me touch on that real quick.
Oh, go ahead, Rick.
We all know about the thin blue line. We all know about how if you pull over another cop silently, you shouldn't give another cop a ticket. Some of us may have it in a state where state patrol don't care who they ticket everybody. And how city cops, sheriffs, and state patrol have beef with each other. We beef with each other in some aspects. But let's talk about the interior aspect of being a police officer coming in as a rookie. Remember, as a rookie, you come in, you're taught that you don't have a voice. When Brass walks in the room, you walk out. You kind of lightweight treated as if you're nothing. And it's not for everybody. Everybody's training was different. You know what I'm saying? I'm just talking, but most people that I've talked to throughout years in different agencies have similar stories. Then you also told to not telling your brother, even if you see certain things, going back to what you said, Matt, why isn't it investigated? Why isn't a body camera looked at on a regular day basis? But if you're doing 12-hour shifts and let's take a place like Minneapolis, like they may have these split into zones and areas, whatever the case may be, and they got 12-hour shifts, so they got 2 platoons every day and maybe a total of 4 or 5 or 6 platoons each week. With that being said, you would have to appoint somebody to watch everyone's body cam that's on duty.
But they do, David. Most agencies have. No, what I'm saying is, if you have, and I say most agencies, if you have a body camera, in-car camera, what even most patrol officers don't realize, supervisors, you guys know, they have a thing that's called a trail audit, which they will look at your camera footage, and it's not always from calls. They'll pick random footage of your camera, in-car camera, body camera, just to see what you're doing. And a lot of dudes do get caught up on speaking bad to citizens and stuff like that on trail audits, not just investigations, just random. Those guys in Wilmington that were threatening to kill all those people, they got caught on a trail audit. They weren't even looking for anything. They were just randomly viewing trail audits, and they caught these guys talking about committing crimes.
And the only reason I'm saying this is because every district, every city is not privy to that, bro. You get what I'm saying? Wilmington.
I definitely get what you're saying. I definitely get what you're saying.
They just happen to have that type of equipment to be able to do what they did. But everyone don't have those type of resources nor the manpower to do so.
Oh, I get it.
But I think you can directly look at that. Like, we all know who's always into it with people on the street. It's simple. Why is that accepted? I know who's an a-hole all the time. So look at the root of that.
And I'm gonna say this to you, Matt, because I'm gonna be a realist about it. So most of those asshole cops, they got longevity, bro. They got a good line of seniority and they got good relationships with people that sit in high places. So unfortunately, a lot of these people that's in high places, they be like, yo, that's my friend, that's my bro. I really don't want to, I know how he is and I talk to him from time to time, but I don't want to really throw the hammer down on him. You get what I'm saying? There's some
I see it all the time. I agree.
You get what I'm saying? There's some officers that do protect their
and the sad thing is there's no policy against being an a-hole, unfortunately. That's the problem.
How do you put a policy in place? Isn't part of our job being an ambassador?
How do you get to that point?
We actually do have a charge for that, Matt, that I've seen used, but only when they really, really, really want to get rid of somebody. And every department has it, and it's conduct of becoming a police officer. Mm-hmm. And if you want to talk about people's bad attitudes, because I work with guys who, if you went on a call with them, it was a guarantee that somebody was going to get locked up for disorderly. Nobody likes, we all agree, everybody here, nobody likes working with those people. Because on days that you like, man, I want to do my 10 hours and chill, and it's close to going home, and you got to run a call and he's your partner, you're like, Jesus wept, man. I know we're going to end up at the jail because of this guy. And the supervisors know it. They know it. But they're like, well, what can we really do? He's not doing anything wrong. Okay, if you really want to be serious, y'all are charged conduct unbecoming. If y'all want to fire somebody for something minor, get rid of this guy. Get rid of him because he's a problem.
I think we should find a way to do that, because we've complained on police officers and nothing is done. And how do we put a system in place to get rid of officers who are unbecoming? Not just they have to kill somebody first, but
absolutely.
What I wanted to ask next is, across the country, right? We've been seeing protests in cities all over America, and the call to action in a lot of those protests is to defund the police, right? Or abolishing police departments in certain scenarios. People are protesting you all, folks that are wearing the badge and doing the job. How do you react to that?
I think it's incredibly disrespectful and it's ignorant to perpetuate the idea of defunding the police. I think that the origin of the concept of defunding the police came from a very bad area. It didn't come from justice. It came from revenge. And they want to give a big FU to the police department, because a lot of these cities aren't just saying defund the police. They want to abolish the police in general. I think that there's a conversation to be had. If you want to improve police, let's sit down and have an honest conversation and say, look, maybe these cops need better training. In my police department, I mean, we were the most dangerous city in the state. While I was in FTO, we had high-speed chases. A homicide was my first day on the job. I mean, you got shootings, murder every day. And so I had a tremendous amount of exposure to use of force and all of the above. But some agencies don't have that. And so they have their first shooting, and now everybody's panicking and everybody got tunnel vision and they shooting people they shouldn't. They got their finger on the trigger, sympathetic reflex. You have all of these training issues that we see. So if people really wanted to be honest, you want to help the police department and you actually care, then bridge the gap, do a ride along, learn about law enforcement, give them the financial support they need. Understand that there's bad cops. Let's facilitate getting them out of the profession. But when you say you want to defund the police and you have no recourse or no alternative, I mean, it's in my personal opinion, it's shameful.
I think we need to defund the police. I think the expansion of responsibilities that has been placed on police departments to solve societal issues has caused part of that funding stream to significantly expand, right? We have concentrated a lot of funding within the police department and taking that funding away from things like the Department of Education, the Department of Social Services, to deal with things like housing insecurity. And that really is not the core responsibility of the police department. So yes, I agree. We still need some form of a public safety apparatus in our communities, because, we do have some bad people out there in the world, and we need to protect our citizenry from that. But that being said, we're at a historic moment due to the multi-ethnic and sustainable protests, where we can have a serious conversation about redefining what the role we want our police departments and public safety departments to play in our communities.
So, Wendy, I want to go to you after this, but I'd like to ask a question to the group. By show of hands, who here thinks we ask too much of the police? Almost everyone. Wendy, I'd love to get your thoughts. And then Aram and David, sorry, I want to hear why you guys didn't raise your hands.
So first of all, on the issues we're dealing with right now, I'm here in South Carolina, where one of the reasons I came down here to work is because this city and the state has recognized that there are some deep systemic issues that need to change. And all of that started with the Mother Emanuel shooting, where 9 people were tragically killed while they were sitting in church. And following that, both the city and the state embarked on a journey that led to this racial bias audit and a recognition that, we need to make change. And I think part of the problem we're dealing with is that people sometimes don't see the difference between having a problem with police brutality and having a problem with police officers. These are deeply rooted systemic issues that exist across all of our institutions, and we're not going to fix policing by just fixing policing. So I think, that leads, when we talk about dumping all of these extraneous problems on the cops, Chief Brown said it after the Dallas massacre, that, every single problem that doesn't have a separately funded 24-hour service is sent to the police. And we've been asked to increasingly handle mental health issues and other things without the tools or equipment to do them. And so if you start looking at what's happening already across the United States, police departments are independently creating their own models to address these problems with multidisciplinary systems. So that we're not just sending a man with a gun to handle every problem. It may be a police officer paired with an actual crisis worker or a mental health expert. And this is a huge, huge opportunity to make those changes and transform what we're doing to make it more effective.
David, Aram, you guys didn't raise your hand. You don't feel that we ask too much from, police officers nowadays. Why is that? David, let's start with you.
To be honest with you, the reason why I raised my hand is growing up in the slums, never having nothing. Each one of us in this panel got a story to tell. But the one thing that I've learned is that there are a lot of things that you just can't learn through training. There's a lot of things that you can't learn in a classroom. How hard is it for you to just have some compassion, for you to have some form of empathy? I don't even think most police know that your number one most important weapon, whatever you want to call it, ain't nothing on your duty belt. Is this, and this, and this. You know how many cops I've been around that don't even know how to use all three, let alone one? The thing is this. I agree with what Wendy stated about having an expert go on scene to a call, but you can't ask too much from the police. You get what I'm saying? It really depends on the community. It depends on the situation. Now, if you are outmanned, for instance, let's say the department that I was working in, we were very understaffed. All right, very, very poor community. Taxes was very low. I was making $16.76 an hour. You know what I'm saying? I was seeing $800 checks every 2 weeks, but I was dealing with every form of crime imaginable. I didn't complain. I got it done with minimal resources. So I feel like as a police officer, as EMS, as fire, whatever the case may be, any type of public servant, I don't think the calling can never really be just too much, or you could be overwhelmed. You get what I'm saying? I can understand that some things you may not be properly prepared for, but it doesn't mean that you can't get some form of experience by doing it.
I just want to jump in here real quick and say this. I agree with you, but the problem is they're holding police officers accountable, although they're not giving them the adequate amount of training. And that's, I think, where the problem lies. When I was on the police department, when you have a loose dog in the community, they call the police department. We have animal control, but we get there faster. Mental health. We had a mental health crisis unit where cops would dress in plain clothes and go out and talk to people in the community. We're just doing too much. Now, we also had assisting agencies, right? So we'll go to a crisis intervention call. They trained all of us officers to be crisis intervention trained. We do our best. And then when it's done, they don't need us. We walk away. We have a crisis team come speak to them. But they do offer, or they're making us do too much. I don't think that we need to be defunded, but I think they need to start to scale back and say, do we really need to go to a call where a person is suicidal and they want to hurt themselves? They're the only one in the house. They're the only one there. They're not hurting. They just want to kill themselves. Do we really need to show up to that? Because when we get there, now the person want to kill everybody because we have exacerbated the situation, and we have to shoot the man because he's a threat. And now we get fired, and now they want to throw you under the bus and say the police department should be eradicated. So
I can't agree with that. I've been on suicide attempts, and I can't agree with that, where I didn't literally talk somebody out of stabbing themselves, talk somebody out of jumping off the roof. Like, I've been there. So I can't agree with that. I can't say that. Why would the police be necessary for a situation like that?
But
I'm not saying you should go in gun ho, but I'm not saying so if you get that call and let's say 5 of your officers get on scene, right? Are all 5 going to be able to handle the situation? No, but maybe one of them is. If you are a police officer, but you are seasoned in life, understand what I'm saying to you. The police officer is just an extension of who you are because you knew who you were before you became an officer, right? Many people come into this profession with no identity. They let this become their identity instead of letting it be an extension of who they are.
But why wouldn't we just send a paramedic or a fireman to a suicide? I get what you're saying, that, you know, we can talk people off the ledge, but we have other emergency responders that are way less visually threatening than we are. I would rather EMT come in with their little t-shirt and boots on than to see a guy, you know, with just gun, badge, taser, and all that on. I mean, if I was going through a mental crisis, I mean, we have this thing called a command presence. And when you're thinking about, you know, killing yourself, seeing a guy come in looking like an action figure ain't what you want to see. I get what you're saying, that you can have compassion, but we got to think about not for us. We got to think about the person on the other side that's in crisis. What's going to serve them better? Us or a paramedic or EMT or somebody that has a degree or skill in crisis intervention? You get what I'm saying? Like let's think about serving.
Let me jump in real quick. There are points and times where police officers need to be there, right? I'm just saying that we need to balance it out a little bit. I've talked people off a ledge. I rescued a girl off a bridge. I talked, a lady pulled a knife on me. She was right in front of me. I could have shot her dead, but I was able to talk to her because of my training. She dropped the knife. I took her to the crisis intervention center. But there are situations like my brother. My brother, sometimes if you make him mad, he can be a very hothead. And when you're a police officer and you show up to a scene, you have to have control. You can't just let a person just willy-nilly do whatever they want. You may have to take control. That may exacerbate the situation. I wouldn't want a cop to come to a situation where my brother is being frantic. I wouldn't even call the police, to be honest. I would try to talk him down and get a family member to do it. Because if he get there, the police don't know him. They don't know how crazy he get. And then sometimes he can calm down if you say the right things. They may get there, he say something crazy. They may take it as a threat. And now things are starting to escalate. So in certain cases, if we can manage it properly, I'm not saying that police shouldn't go to any suicidal calls, but if we can manage them properly, maybe we can have it to where people are not getting killed by us. Because I don't have a problem with police officers using deadly force against individuals. I don't have a problem. But nowadays in the public, man, if you kill a person and come to find out 20 days later that person had a mental disability and they had a propensity for violence, they're gonna rail police officers. So I just think we should balance it, not get rid of it, but we should have a fair balance.
Yeah, you know, to Brandon's larger point, you know, we have to think about when we put police officers in schools, what are we doing? Ultimately, we're putting police officers in a situation where they have to make decisions. And a lot of times the decision is easy to criminalize adolescent behavior rather than give that young person the mental health treatment that he needs to deal with whatever issue they have going on. When you send police to address street homelessness, and ultimately that communication is not working, when you get compliance, you deal with housing insecurities by arresting someone for illegally camping within the city limit. And this happens thousands of times throughout the country, right, where police are provided with the limited solutions to deal with these issues, right? So that's why we have to really think about, like, to Brandon's point, what do we really want the police to respond to in moments of crisis?
So, Aaron, you wanted to speak? Go ahead, bro. I wanted to hear what you had to say.
If you're asking if we're expected too much out of us, I think the answer is yes and no. Some parts of the country don't get paid as well as other parts of the country. I'm fortunate to be in a state where law enforcement has a really good retirement pay and benefit system. But if you're paying me $12 an hour with no promise of retirement, no benefits, I can't ask that individual to go into harm's way. So pay should be commensurate to the type of officer quality that you want. You want top quality officers, you got to pay them top quality. The FBI crime stats indicate officers with college degrees have a less propensity to violate policy or go outside the scope of their authority. So speaking to what David said, empathy, as police officers, we have to make decisions. So I'm a sergeant of a patrol field force. And if we have a mental health call, someone that wants to commit suicide, of course we'll respond. The public has asked us to help. We're going to respond. But if we get there, we have to make a decision. If the guy doesn't want our help and he's an adult, we have to tell the family, I'm sorry, he doesn't want our help. And it's not illegal to want to kill yourself. And that's coming from a guy whose dad committed suicide. My dad he was a Vietnam vet. He had PTSD. And unfortunately, I got there too late and he committed suicide. But I was sure damn glad the police were there. It was in another city. The police were there. It was my peers. They knew exactly what to tell me to make me feel comforted. That day, if it wasn't for that pastor coming over to reconcile me, I don't know what would have happened. Fast forward a couple of years, reeling with my father's death, my mom was murdered on her porch. She was shot in the head by someone that tried to get into her house. And I'm an only child, so now I'm having to deal with all this stuff myself. But to David's point, life experience, I would want someone like me to show up, So I think it's important that when we recruit officers that are career-minded, that are going to be compensated for what they do. And we, instead of trying to find out if in their background that they're not going to be a troublemaker, we should find out in their background if they've got life experience. It's one thing to be street smart. It's another thing to be book smart. We need a good combination of both. And I think our background practices need to expand.
There you go. There you go. That's what I was.
Yeah. Look how young we hire though. I mean, I was a proponent of, at my department before I left, I was like, we need to stop hiring these guys they come from being a cadet to going into the academy, and then they're on the street telling adults what to do. You know what I mean? You just turned 21. We're going to give you a badge, a gun, authority, a car, and tell you to go out here and make life decisions when you just came out of your mom's basement. So
I want to add this. I think that it's less about, I agree with you 100%. It's less about age and more about exposure and experience.
Yeah.
Because I joined the police department at 23 years old, but I had life experience, man. Some of my family members are on crack. Some of them are in prison. So I've had a variety of experiences that put me in a position that when I became a police officer, I could talk to anybody. I could talk to the crackhead because my auntie was a crackhead. So I could talk and be empathetic. I also went to college. So people who were more educated, I was able to communicate well with them.
I think what's critically important about what Brandon is talking about is we need to also look at who our elected officials appointed to be leading police departments, right? So those same lived experiences that Brandon and David and Aram are talking about are not really representative of the police chiefs and police commissioners that lead our law enforcement agencies. There's a study that's going to come out by Hamilton College where they can say police departments that are led by African-American, Hispanic police chiefs or police commissioners, per capita rate, fatality shootings are 70% lower than those departments that are led by Caucasian police chiefs or police commissioners. So that lived experience not only benefits officers that are coming through the rank and file, but it also needs to be represented in the positions of chiefs of police and police commissioners in this country, and it's not. It's very lacking.
So I want to just pivot to something else really quickly for the group. By show of hands, who here has personally seen excessive force used on the job?
Yes.
Almost everyone. So keep your hand raised if you did something in that moment.